Hi everyone, I hope you're doing okay. It is another journal with me this week just because it's been a bit too warm to be working in the attic for an archives episode. I will link these coasters in the description, first of all, just to get that out of the way. I bought them from an artist called Kazland or Kaz. They're super cool. Obviously, they have ghosts. He calls them ghosters, which is phenomenal. I'll put them in the description. I worked out, good news and bad news, I worked out what the, blurriness problem was from, 2 episodes ago. The bad news is that it happened again this week, but I worked out what it is. It's when I accidentally filmed the video in cinema mode on my phone. 2 out of 10 would not recommend. It does look like there's Vaseline on the camera lens at some points, but not enough of the video, I think, is too badly affected to refilm it. And because I spent a long time working in the planner section and then moving into the commonplace section, I didn't really want to refilm it because I think this is a good overview of how I'm using the book. Obviously, if I started fresh filming, then I wouldn't be able to show you the planner because this week is full. So we're persevering, I guess. Just ignore any funkiness, any haziness. I don't think it's too terrible. And my handwriting is illegible anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. You can still see me filling it. So hopefully it's not too bad. This week, to change things up a bit and to try and discourage some of my normal weird rambling, I guess, I have some questions. It's a mix from YouTube and a couple from Patreon, and I'm just gonna answer some questions. I have some about my notebooks, some just more about general life stuff and work, I guess. It's a bit of a mix. I mostly just picked the ones I'm comfortable answering, so that's what we have. The first question was just about how I'm getting on with my traveler's notebook. Someone said they were excited for another Journal With Me episode so soon because they wanted to see how I was getting on. A good opportunity for me to get to talk about it just for a minute because I am really enjoying it. I think this morning or yesterday, all of the Hobonichi lineup for 2024 was released and people are posting their thoughts and their first impressions. I'm happy to say that I'm not super into all of it this year. I'm not super tempted by it. It's not that I don't think it's cool. I was worried that I would see something amazing and then panic, even though I know that it wasn't working for me. That hasn't really happened, and I am relieved. The only one that I think is really pretty is there's a new texture this year, and it's a black gingham pattern. And it's a cloth one, and it's on the Weeks, I think, and there's a Hon with it, which is the new hardback books. It looks really nice. The only thing that I was wow, that's pretty, I could learn to love that, is the gingham fabric A5 Hon, so the cousin, but it's the Hon book, so hardcover. That's pretty, but I don't need it. I am really enjoying my traveler's notebook. I like it. I think a couple of people said this in the comments last week, or maybe I was talking to people on Patreon, but it's nice that it still has the customizability almost of a Filofax while still being slightly more structured, and I think that's a big help. It's a big improvement, I guess, because the Filofax was a little unstructured. Obviously, you can add dividers and stuff, but I still feel when it comes to archiving and then choosing when to remove pages, I felt a bit of a loss about it. I wasn't sure how to go about it. I was too attached to some pages and not attached enough to others, but then I didn't want to commit to only taking some out instead of taking a chunk out. Obviously, they were all they were all organized by when I used them. They were chronological. And I was a bit panicked about the idea of just taking 4 or 5 sheets out randomly and putting them in a folder and then having them separate from the pages they were living amongst, if that makes sense. But I also was not ready to take the whole book out and start again. And I feel like working in a traveler's notebook kind of solves that for me. I still have the freedom that I had from Filofax, especially because I'm making my own notebooks for the traveler's books. So I still have the layout that I created for myself, but then I also can add and take whole books out rather than pages, which I think is a big help. An interesting development from last week is that I think I like the monthly booklet. I think I personally might stick in the monthly booklet and see how I get on. And by that I mean, so it's the planning half. There's one half planning and then the other half is commonplace. And then for each month I would start a new book. And I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea of each booklet being a snapshot of the month to look back on. I think there's something quite satisfying about being able to start fresh every month, but it still being like a book rather than a few pages. I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense, but I do kind of feel it. I just think it's quite nice, and imagine having 12 at the end. That's kind of amazing. So I don't know, I might try it again next month, September, and then see how I feel for October. I think I am gonna take the advice that a lot of people gave me, which was to just do 3-month booklets, and then I have more time to work things out. I was hoping to have things done really soon so I could make 4-month booklets, and then you would only need like 3 a year, and then I would have to release them in September for the 4 months to line up. But I am a bit stuck for time, and I don't want to be stressed about it. I don't want to be panicking about getting things ready and then messing them up and then trying to ship them. I think I am going to take that extra time. I will definitely be making the digital version available for international viewers or people who are interested, so please don't worry about that. That's still a plan. Otherwise, though, it's going really well. I am really enjoying it. In this section of the video, you can see me catching up on the week. I did lose some time this week. I've been drawing some new Halloween ghost cards, some gloom cards for my shop, I guess, for you guys, for me. I don't want to share them. I don't want to put them on screen. I've shown them to my patrons. My patrons asked me to talk about them in the video, but I don't want to because I kind of want it to be a secret, a surprise. I always show everything way in advance and then there's no surprise, but I think it might be kind of cool to reveal them when they're all done. So I'm not doing that yet. I'm gonna try and be patient and not too excited for once. I'm not very good at that, but I want to try. So I was gonna do some commonplace pages about the ghost cards, and then I was like, no, because I'll be leaking them myself in my own notebook. So no, top secret, but I'm trying to make them cool. I think there's going to be 10 cards. I think that's a good number. I'll make physical copies available in the UK, and then obviously the digital ones will be available for everyone else like they have been for the rest of the cards. But yeah, I lost some time this week because I was accidentally hyper-focusing on that. So I'm catching up on my days, catching up with some notes about the week. This column I'm writing in now on the right hand side of the page is just for notes about the week, or you can use it for tracking, I guess. You could use it for, I don't know, anything you want really. I just like to have it there as another bit of space to write in. I normally use all of the gaps in the days to write like a to-do list, basically. It's like 6 or so like lines for writing stuff down. And I like it for my to-do list, but then I do also usually really like to have an extra space for notes, and so I made sure to include that when I designed the page, and I do really like it. And then I think when everything is full, it looks really nice. So yeah. Moving on to the first question then. Someone said, "Hello Megan, I'm always in awe of your discipline and organizational skills. How do you manage to track so much of your day? Do you follow a strict daily routine?" I wouldn't say my routine is particularly strict, to be honest with you. I have issues with migraines and probably an undiagnosed sleep disorder, as we all know. I'm also autistic, so it's like I do need routine and structure because of being autistic. That is definitely something I need. I also have a little dog, so naturally there is a good amount of routine to our lives. She is like accidentally the most like aggressive routine enforcer in the household because she starts screaming like 2 minutes before lunchtime, that kind of thing. So she keeps us pretty structured, me and my dad. Apart from that though, not too strict. I spend the mornings downstairs. I don't wake at a specific time. Anytime between 8 and 10 I wake up. My sleep is always really messed up, so some days I just sleep in longer than others, I guess. I do also spend big chunks of the day napping because of my sleep problems. It's a big part of my life is just sleeping and not sleeping, and both sides are equally frustrating, and it's a whole thing. So in that respect, I don't have a lot of routine. It's mostly just like doing what I feel like I can do each day. It's kind of just seeing how I go. But meal times are quite structured, and then like bedtime is quite structured because of the sleep issues. That kind of thing. So like yes and no, I guess. Mostly like, I don't know how to explain it. Life stuff is structured, but then work stuff is less structured, and I just do what I can. Yeah, I guess everything happens around meal times. So there's morning stuff, and then there's after lunch stuff, and then there's after dinner stuff, and that's kind of how I do it. I normally take a nap around 2 or 3 p.m, so then there's like a gap after lunch for like doing stuff, and then I take that nap, and then I have a little gap again before dinner. And I guess that's how I structure my day, is trying to see how I feel to be able to do those things in those gaps. I've never had to talk about this out loud before. I don't think it makes much sense. But yeah, that's how I do it. The next question was, I have a really simple question and quite a stupid one too, but I've been wondering, how do you use your margins exactly? Do you start by writing on the right part and then follow up to the left part of the page? And I guess I should have answered this one first, because it would have been topical to what I was talking about with writing on this side of the page. Because I guess this is also kind of a margin in some ways. I like this space, as I said, just for making notes about my week, kind of just like brain dumping about my week on the pages that are relevant. But then on my commonplace pages, which I'll move to fairly soon, the setup for my commonplace pages is a main section for the text, which is the big portion on the right hand side of the page, and then the left hand side of the page is the margin, and that's like a smaller chunk, a smaller column. And it's not a stupid question. I get asked this a lot, so I think it confuses a lot of people, if that makes you feel better. I do always write in the main section first, and then I go back and I write in the margin. I just like to elaborate on my thoughts. Sometimes it's to add extra context or to add the source of the text. If I'm commonplacing and it's not my own words, then obviously I can put the source in there. I can then also add my own thoughts onto text that isn't my own. So if you see it in my file of facts where I printed articles, or even in this book where I printed an article, I can use the margin to go back in and add thoughts according to the text. It's just... you have to, I guess, think about it like when you annotate a book, obviously the text already exists and then you write in the sides about your own thoughts. It's kind of like that. Other pages, sometimes I just have a small piece of information I want to put on a page. So it might not be related to the main text at all, but it's just something small that doesn't need its own full page. I don't always like to have like a really small bit at the top and then have to underline it and then start like a whole different thing underneath it, especially if the thing I want to write only ends up being like 4 lines or something. That's really annoying for me. So I do just find it easier to write in the margin instead, and then I think it looks nicer. Obviously my index system means that I can tag things when I need to, so I can differentiate them from different parts of the page. When I flip through my commonplace book in a few minutes, I think there's a bit in one of the margins about a reliquary of how do you say reliquary? Reliquary? I can't say it. You know the word I mean, of St. Anthony. It's St. Anthony's jawbone, and I have a picture for it. It looks really weird. You'll probably notice the picture. And then the text that goes with the image is only very small. It's only a few lines, and so I put it in the margin, and none of the rest of the text on the page is related. But I didn't want to give it its own tiny segment on a blank page because I just hate how proportional that looks. Like, it just is wrong. So I put it in the margin of a different page to help fill it out, and I guess to maximize my use of paper. That's just how I like to work. I'm sorry that it's confusing. I'm not sure that I'm even making a lot of sense talking about it, but that's how I use my margins. It's just to elaborate on the text, or to add different thoughts that are kind of relevant, or to just add random notes, other pieces of text that are too small for other pages, that kind of thing. And then I can keep everything separated and categorized and easy to look back on with my index dot system. Obviously I've been working this way for a long time, so I think it's easy for me to look at and understand what it all means, and not so easy to explain apparently. The next question was about the new gloomies. Someone from Patreon said, "Hey Megan, love the new gloomies. Do you brainstorm or pre-plan when designing them? Like gloomy sticker sheet zines, or go straight into the digital sketching? Interested as to whether as a planner girl you plan your plans or freestyle." So sometimes I do have a vague idea of a project I want to do. Like when I was starting work on my everyday gloom zine, I did make some notes and some thoughts about what I wanted it to have in it. But otherwise I don't plan my work very much, my illustration work, because I have aphantasia, which is that thing where you have like no mind's eye. It's a spectrum disorder. So sometimes people have like a little bit of a mind's eye, or they see things in black and white, or the things are hazy and they're only small. And I have no mind's eye at all, and I didn't know that was weird until fairly recently when people were talking about it, and then I was like, you guys can actually see stuff in your head. That whole thing about like imagining a pink hippo or whatever, I thought it was like a metaphorical thing, like a turn of phrase. I didn't know that it was literal. The idea that people have visual memories or are visualizing things is crazy to me. So I don't know how to talk about it. That's very strange for me. As a result, all of my work is kind of intuitive, I guess. And because I'm autistic as well, and with hyper-focusing, like, I can only work on stuff when I feel like I really want to, when it feels right. And normally I'm not even conscious of that fact. I'll just sit down and then I'll pick up my iPad and start working. I'll start drawing, and I won't even know that I had planned to do it until it's happening, kind of thing. So I do make vague outlines for ideas, especially to help me solidify an idea. But then when it comes to actually putting the work together, it just happens, which is why when people ask me to make videos drawing, I find it quite hard because a lot of it happens like just before a nap or just after a nap. It's not really suitable for filming. It's just kind of quite intuitive, and especially when my health has been so weird, I feel like I spend so much time in that in-between place, and that's when I'm working, strangely. And then I have like very little memory of it after and stuff, and it's like a whole thing right now. But no, I guess I don't really plan it. I just draw, and then I jigsaw things around, and I take things away and I add things on, and that's why digital work is so good for me. It gives me a lot of room for trial and error and not having to plan, because I can just kind of feel it out while I'm doing it. I hope that answers your question. For sticker sheets and stuff, I'll normally make a list of the kind of stuff I want to include, and then I'll draw a couple, and then I can normally see how much room is left on the page, and then I can pick things that have shapes that would work in those spaces, that kind of thing. So again, it's still very intuitive, but I might have like a very vague guideline of like the idea or like the vibe, I guess, for the work. But otherwise, no, I just go for it and it happens somehow. Someone else said, I'm curious about if you have any plans for Halloween. Are you going to decorate your room or the entire house? Do you have any traditions like horror movie nights or pumpkin carving? I know your channel has Halloween vibes all year round, but just wondering if you'll do something for that season. It's a strange one because as a kid I didn't get to celebrate it that much, so I never grew up pumpkin carving. That's not something I've ever really done. And I don't tend to do it now just because I have no experience in it and the mess kind of intimidates me. So I don't carve pumpkins. I normally buy pumpkins and then I stack them outside and I think it looks cute. Sometimes we keep one on the kitchen table, but last year I got in trouble because it rotted underneath and I didn't realise and it marked the table. So somehow I don't think I'll be allowed to do that again this year. But I do buy pumpkins, and last year I went to a pumpkin patch for the first time, so that was really exciting. I've never done that before either. I really love Halloween. I've always really loved spooky stuff, but where I grew up in London, like, Halloween wasn't really that big of an event, I guess. Either that or I just wasn't really allowed to do it. I never got to go trick-or-treating much as a kid. I think probably only like twice in my whole life. So that wasn't really my experience growing up. Now, I love to do stuff for the trick-or-treaters. And obviously in London it wasn't as big in our area. But since moving to Reading a couple of years ago, we live in like quite like a family-oriented area, I guess. And there's so many kids come for trick-or-treating. It's literally like, it's the highlight of my whole year, is being able to like put all the decorations up. And if it's on a weekday, they're normally going home from school when I'm putting them up. So they walk past and they can see me doing it and they're really excited. And it's everything. And then like as soon as it starts to get dark, the little ones start coming around with their parents and it's really cute. And then obviously as the evening goes on, you get like the older kids and it's really fun. Like it's so good. And in our area, like they normally go in big groups, so you get like a bunch of parents and then like 20 kids and then they all come at once. And everyone has different costumes and stuff, and sometimes they have music or they have like glowing, like lighting up costumes and stuff, and it's just like, it's kind of amazing. And only a few houses on our road actually decorate, but it's still just really fun. So mostly my evening is about the trick-or-treaters. I normally have like sweets and chocolate and stuff, but then I also have like glow sticks and I have vampire fangs, and I offer them like which one they want, and they almost always go for the fangs or the bracelets over the sweets, which I think is really interesting. And I think I'm talking too fast because I'm excited, but I love it. Apart from that, my brother will normally visit, and then my brother, my dad and I will normally watch a horror movie or something. I decorate my room, obviously. and I normally decorate a bit downstairs, but not too much. I think it's more fun to decorate my own space, I guess, and then I don't have to try and clean up downstairs afterwards. I normally would decorate like the table that we're eating from. We normally have some kind of like themed Halloween snack food, and that's quite good. But otherwise, yeah, I think that's kind of what we do, is just we watch movies and stuff. I kind of almost prefer the lead up to Halloween, like the month of October, and getting to gradually decorate and like buy stuff, and themed food appears and stuff, and kind of just like the crunchy leaves and the weather and everything is better. And I think I prefer the lead up to Halloween rather than the actual night itself. I've never really been to a Halloween party or anything, so it's kind of like we just watch a movie. But I spend so much of the year watching horror movies that I guess it's not really that different. The nice thing is just that like my brother comes and stuff, and we all get to hang out together and watch something spooky. So I don't know. The next question. Hi, I was wondering if you could talk about how you came to develop such self-sufficiency and the spirit of a fighter. Honestly, your eagerness to constantly learn new ways to help yourself and your confidence are so inspiring. This one is a good one to mellow me back out because I think it just comes from having to be resilient. Obviously, I grew up as like a medical mystery in air quotes. I had migraine problems and they didn't know what caused them. I went to Great Ormond Street, which is a famous children's hospital in the UK. They didn't know what was wrong with me either. I was really poorly for a really long time, and then my mental health started to suffer as well. The long story short is eventually you get to a point where you either sink or swim. And I almost sunk a couple of times, if you catch my drift. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to try and cope and learn to adapt and live with it, I guess. And I don't want you to think that it came out of nowhere or that it just happened or that it was easy. Like, it's something that took me most of my life to learn how to live with. And I don't know. I've never really... How do I talk about it? It just happened over time. I got to a point where I was like, I can't live like that. But I can't change the fact that I have chronic illnesses and disabilities, so you just have to learn to adapt. And so once I kind of decided that like enough was enough, I guess, and I still have a lot of bad days, don't get me wrong, especially recently with the sleep stuff, which has been like a lifelong issue, and suddenly starting to like come to terms with it all. Like every day I have to wake up and choose to be resilient about it, I guess, rather than the alternative. And I do find it very hard. I guess the main thing to remember is that you're only seeing my best face on YouTube, and the rest of the time I'm like a grumpy little old man, like complaining about all my ailments at the kitchen table. And on YouTube I'm being nice and then talking about how I cope with it. And the rest of the time I'm sleeping on the sofa and I'm like confused and hazy and a little bit angry and grumpy. But it's just something eventually you have to do if you have any kind of chronic or long-term conditions or disabilities, I guess, is that the spirit of a fighter just develops naturally over time. Yeah, I'm glad you find it inspiring, but I don't know, it's just something that happens eventually. Like, I've been sick since I was young, more than half my life at this point, way more than half my life at this point, and I will be forever, I guess, probably. It'll always be about symptom management rather than curing, because that's how a lot of stuff works. So I'm always looking for ways to cope with it, because otherwise it sucks. So that's my motivation. And then I am kind of running out of footage, but I think we can do one more. Someone said, what has been your favourite CD find? I've been going around secondhand bookstores and finding some fun CDs for cheap. I'm under the impression that you usually buy your CDs cassettes online, but do you ever buy in person? Cassettes I do buy online because they're quite hard to get in the UK, especially because my music taste is older rather than newer stuff. So that's why I've not been buying them recently. But CDs I actually do buy in person. I don't buy CDs online. I don't actually like online shopping. I kind of hate it. I buy my CDs from a really good secondhand music shop by me called Sound Machine. If you're ever in or around Reading, you should check it out. They have some cassettes, they have CDs, and they have vinyl, and I just buy CDs. They get new stuff in regularly. It's really cool. So I buy my CDs in a CD shop, a secondhand CD shop. My favourite find, probably that Ramones book I found a few weeks ago, with the CDs and the comic book and stuff in it. Really cool. It had some DVD footage on it as well. For me, that was like a holy grail find. Like, I saw it and I gasped out loud, and the guy was like, ah. And I was like, I'm gonna have to take it. Apart from that, just some cool soundtracks I found over time, I guess. Every time I find a Nirvana CD is a good day because I do love them. Anytime I find a Deftones CD because I love Deftones. Ramones, obviously, all my favourites, my 3 major food groups right there. But that Ramones book has got to be like my main, the main best thing I found so far to date, I think. Also, that Punk box set I found at the same time, like, that was a good day for me. Both were absolutely 10 out of 10 finds. And then the last question, someone said, did you ever see yourself having YouTube and now be your job? Was social media ever a career you saw in your future, or did you kind of stumble onto it because you could make it your own? And the answer is kind of all of the above. I didn't really plan for YouTube and social media to be my life, but I accidentally had a social media following. It kind of happened because I was in the right place at the right time. Back in like the early Instagram and Tumblr days and stuff, I guess. It kind of built over time. Like, I've been online since I was 12, so it's been a long time. And things built quite gradually, I guess. And then I went to uni for illustration, to university for illustration, and then by the time I graduated, there was no longer any such thing really as being an illustrator without having a social media presence. It's a big part now of how you get work in the field, I guess, in the industry. So it kind of happened by accident, but I had deliberately chosen to be a freelancer because I could fit the hours around me. Obviously, all of the stuff I've mentioned previously means that it's really important that I can set my own hours and I can choose my work very carefully and I can be very accommodating from home for myself. I don't think I could ever thrive in an office environment or anything like that, so it was a choice that I made very deliberately. YouTube just kind of happened. My patrons asked for videos after a while, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And now we're here. Now it's been over a year, so thank you to my patrons for doing that for me. I'm really glad I took the leap to get back into YouTube because it has been really fun. And just to connect with so many like-minded people and to get to talk about notebooks all the time is absolutely amazing. It's very exciting. So it was kind of a plan, kind of not a plan, kind of just how things developed, is that it just turned out this way. And then, you know, I can get paid doing what I love, so naturally I didn't turn it down. Yeah, I do kind of... It would be cool, obviously, if I had a job that had more stability, but then the problem is that I don't have a lot of stability, so I don't think I would be compatible with a different kind of job, if that makes sense. So I'm very lucky and very grateful to be able to make it work. I think we do actually have time for one more question, so I'll answer one more, and I have one more on my list picked out, so it works. It's a good one too. It says, I've been having a bit of trouble recently in dealing with life because I've been very hyper-fixated on something, and it's hard to think of anything else and keep up with daily tasks and chores and work, so I'm curious, do you ever experience that, and how do you deal with it? And I think this ties in quite nicely with that question about how structured and routined my days are as well. I was saying to my dad last night after I read this question that I feel like I'm almost not prepared to answer it because I often feel like my whole life, in some respects, is just jumping between hyperfixations. And if I'm not hyperfixating, I feel like restless and kind of bored and kind of trapped almost. I feel really like uninspired, I guess, and when I'm hyperfixating, I feel very inspired. It's hard because I prefer being in the hyperfocus state, definitely. But recently, for example, I've been jumping from hyperfocus to hyperfocus to hyperfocus. I went from Filofax to Traveler's Notebook, the Everyday Gloom zine, the new Halloween ghost cards, that kind of thing. I was jumping and jumping and jumping. Somewhere in the middle of there, I had a big Sims 4 phase as well. And then there's no time to breathe. And because I was so hyper-focused and jumping between them so quickly, like, my state of living, I guess, it got so bad. Like, I had this big pile of laundry in my room that I didn't clean up for weeks. My room itself was a mess. I hadn't hoovered in a couple of weeks, and I wasn't keeping up with my laundry. Like, I wasn't looking after myself. I was eating toast for dinner every day because I was so focused on the stuff that I wanted to do that, like, everything else went by the wayside. So I guess I just want to say that, like... I don't know what I want to say. I want to say that I guess it's part of being neurodivergent will always be those hyperfixations, but I don't know how to cope with it because I don't have the kind of discipline, I guess. I mean, I think if I needed to, I could stop. Like, if it was something really serious, like if my taxes were late, I could stop and do my taxes. But generally speaking, I guess because symptom management, as I said before, is such a big part of my life, I would always rather be letting myself hyper-focus than being in that in-between place and thinking about other stuff. For me, hyper-focus is often a very welcome distraction from the other stuff I have going on, and so I often let myself fall into it at a detriment to the rest of my life. So I'm not sure that I have good advice for this one, but I guess it is something that I kind of wanted to acknowledge. If anyone has any good advice for the question asker, please put it in the comments. I would also be happy to read it. If you have any advice for how to cope with hyperfixating at inappropriate times, or how to cope when hyperfixations are like taking over your life to an extent that is not compatible, please let us all know. I would be very interested. With that being said, you're hopefully watching a little flip through of my notebook on the bed. I haven't filmed it yet. But I hope you've had a good week. I hope your weekend goes well. I hope you enjoyed seeing this update. I will not film this video in cinematic mode again, you have my word. But other than that, I will see you next week.